Сейчас я хотела бы предоставить слово дорогому гостю, коллеге из Казахстана. Это Майкл Макоelle Tsediso.
Thank you very much, Elena, and all the participants of this conference. I will be making a presentation on the pre-service teacher mentoring as an alternative method for inclusive teaching. So we are quite aware that the world now is moving towards what we call inclusive education, and in the classrooms of schools, of kindergartens and universities, the teachers are expected to integrate all the methods that can support all the students that are having special needs or disabilities in their classroom. So this integration of teaching methods into the curriculum has become now the focus for all the teacher preparation institutions. So I'm going to try and discuss how we can do this better, or how we can do this in a different, more efficient manner. So the teachers are transitioning to the student-centered model of curriculum delivery. And as a result, they are expected to practice what we call a constructivist curriculum approach, which puts students at the center. A curriculum delivery method that seeks to take into cognizance the diversity of students, that seeks to take into cognizance the different ways in which we need to support each and every student in the class. And therefore, this kind of change has impacted on the role of teachers. Now, the teachers are no longer the people who can impart knowledge to the students, but they also have to play a role in the support of different students in the classroom. So the notion of inclusive teaching, as you would recall, it's a process through which we teach and we respond to the needs of all students in the classroom. And it's not based on segregation, it is based on what we call the less restrictive environment, where all students within the classroom would have access to education without any discrimination. But then how do we do it? Normally, the pedagogical universities, as they are called in this region, or the universities that are preparing the teachers for the inclusive teaching, are using what we call the practicum. So the practicum, it's a school-based experience program that all the pre-service teachers have to undergo. They have been placed into the school and they've been prepared on how to teach. So, but why is this practicum now a problem as far as inclusion is concerned? First of all, is that there's an assumption that when we prepare the teachers in terms of the pedagogical content knowledge coupled with the practicum, this would prepare the teacher sufficiently for the inclusive pedagogy or for teaching inclusively. But so far, the research is telling us this is too optimistic, and this does not actually culminate into inclusive teaching. And secondly, that school mentors of pre-service teachers, they focus mostly on the general pedagogy, pedagogical skills, rather than on teachers' skills of integrating students with special needs or students with disabilities in the classroom. The placement of pre-service teachers in schools is a challenge now, because schools do not normally reflect the kind of environment that would prepare the pre-service teacher for inclusive teaching. So teachers are just being placed at random without taking into cognizance the need for them to develop their skills for inclusive teaching. At the same time, we also have the problems in terms of the development of inclusive education standards. In this region, I know for a fact that there is a very serious process taking place where the different post-Soviet countries are beginning to try and develop the standards for inclusive education. And then again, there's also poor preparation of pre-service teachers and pedagogical universities, as you call them, or those universities that are preparing pre-service teachers for this. So in this presentation, I am trying to explore with you the mentoring as an alternative mechanism to prepare the pre-service teachers in the facilitation of inclusive teaching and learning. But what is mentoring? Mentoring is a learning process that is characterized by a helpful mentor trying to assist a mentee in developing some skills. And therefore, this sometimes involves emotional support and also in terms of their achievement. And therefore, the mentor is regarded as a knowledgeable other. The mentor is regarded as somebody who has got some form of skills and knowledge in terms of teaching, and somebody who can assist the novice teacher. There are different kinds of mentoring. For instance, this personal growth mentoring approach, situated learning mentoring approach, core practice mentoring approach, as well as critical transformative mentoring approach. So these are the different ways in which student teachers can be mentored. Now, when you analyze that, you will realize that all of them put collaboration at the center of mentoring, taking into cognizance the well-being, the historical context of the pre-service teachers. And in this study, we tried to focus on mentoring as a key critical vehicle for collaboration. Therefore, we chose to use the collaborative action research as a vehicle to develop the pre-service teachers through the mentoring process. And action research, but what is action research? Action research is a systematic inquiry used in education as a vehicle to improve the teaching practices. It has got several benefits for the pre-service teachers. One of them is bringing the pre-service teachers in the process of teaching and learning and promoting their reflective practice. So that's why we feel that using action research would be important for this process. So therefore, we decided to use a collaborative action research. Probably we established what we call the community of inquiry, or the community of practice, or the professional learning community with the teachers. And therefore, we developed this group consisting of the mentors and the mentees. The mentors will be the teachers who are experienced, who are placed, who are teaching in inclusive schools. And then we'll have the mentees who are pre-service teachers who are enrolled at a pedagogical university, or who are enrolled at the university that is training the teachers. So therefore, during this process, we embarked on the collaborative action research, and concomitantly with the mentoring process. Now you will see that the collaborative action research has got 4 different stages: planning, observation, action, and reflection. And on the side, we have mentoring, which is preparing for mentoring, pre-mentoring, mentoring, and post-mentoring. Now, how did we use all this? All these stages are integrated into a collaborative action cycle of collaborative action research and mentoring, and they take form of a cycle. This cycle can repeat itself for as long as we are still seeking for solutions. So the process is cyclic. So this is what happens during the first stage of the process, the preparing for the mentoring or the planning stage, where first of all, we have got to train the mentors, prepare the mentors for their role in terms of the critical support for the pre-service teachers. And then the pre-mentoring stage, developing the criteria which is going to be used for the process of mentoring, which is first of all, the situation analysis. Secondly, making pedagogical choices and developing inclusive assessment strategy. All these things are integrated into the mentoring process. So what situation analysis means is that students are empowered to record, peruse through the situation in the classroom in terms of the student abilities and the situation in the classroom in terms of needs and the support that is needed by the student. And this is what it means by making pedagogical choices, making decisions around the methodology to be used in the classroom, the support for the methodology, the conditions and the situation in the classroom, and then carrying over the assessment, what needs to be done in terms of the assessment. To what extent is the assessment reflecting or addressing the needs of the diverse students in the classroom? And then we developed the mentoring process over a certain period. In this particular case, we took about 6 months to develop the mentoring, through which certain actions were carried out in the classroom with the mentors observing the mentees and the mentees taking action. And then at the end of each and every mentoring cycle, there is what we call the reflections or group interpretative discussions to look at what evidence have the pre-service teachers collected in the classroom that could either support or that could either not support the inclusive teaching. And then post the mentoring process, all the members of the community of practice or community of inquiry, as I said before, will come together and reflect on the process. And in so doing, they are documenting evidence that support inclusive teaching. And as a result, developing what we call the local theories about what inclusive teaching is in their context, what are the most important things that are emerging from the process. So that kind of like reflecting and using what we call a local theory development. And then after that, we do analyze scientifically the data that was collected through the CAR, through the collaborative action research, to make some scientific conclusions. This is just the whole process of data analysis that you would take in any normal research. Now, in this particular study, we have come up with certain understandings. One, that in order for us to use mentoring as a development tool for inclusive teaching, there must be an understanding of mentoring by both mentor and mentee. Now, what we observed in schools is that although the teachers are mentoring the students, they don't have a deeper understanding of mentoring is, and the expectations of the mentoring by the mentors and the mentees in terms of inclusive teaching are not clear. We've got to also prepare the mentors for their role. Now, in this particular case, we developed a network of schools that will be part of the mentoring process. And then from time to time, the teacher educators from the pedagogical universities would, from time to time, conduct workshops and preparing the mentors for their role, and the mentors preparing the pre-service teachers for their role in the classroom. Clarity of the concept of inclusive teaching, because if you go to all the educational institutions and you ask all the educators or the teachers or the lecturers what inclusive teaching actually means, you get a lot of answers. So in the process of mentoring, we highlight the fact that the first thing that needs to be clarified is what inclusive teaching is. Because what inclusive teaching is in terms of, for instance, in a school somewhere in Moscow and a school somewhere in Astana, it might not necessarily mean the same thing. So inclusion could actually mean different things in terms of the context. And by context, we mean who are the students in the classroom, who's teaching the student, what is being taught, and what are the conditions. Also, in the mentoring process, the process of making pedagogical choices is of critical importance, that pre-service teachers have got to be taught on how, first of all, to do the situation analysis, and based on that, what are the pedagogical choices which are appropriate, and that could actually address the needs of students with special needs and the needs of students with disabilities in the classroom. And then we also, in this particular study, found that there are different strategies that teachers use in the classroom, which promote inclusive teaching. And therefore, we realize that even though we assume that some pre-service teachers were aware of the methods, but they don't know how to use the methods. So it is important for them to undergo some training, preparation for specifically the methods that have been tested and tried within the inclusive classroom, and then they can be guided on how these teaching methodologies can be used. And lastly, also in terms of the assessment, there are different kinds of assessments that pre-service teachers, for example, are taught generally as an approach towards pedagogical training. And therefore, we've got to make sure that there are specialized programs for how to assess students that are with special needs or students that are having some learning barriers. And usually students with special educational needs are subjected to the same assessments as the rest of the students in the classroom. We observe in some cases where the pre-service teachers do not really know what they should do. There are certain principles that are embedded in the mentoring process which are important, that came up strongly in the study. First one is reflexivity and critique, that we've got to build the pre-service teachers that can reflect on their teaching, that can critique their own teaching, that can research their own teaching with the purpose of improving it. Secondly, communication is of critical importance. Teaching is not an isolated act. Teaching is a scientific act, and it can only be improved once the teachers can communicate with other teachers around what works and what doesn't work. So sometimes with teachers, teachers are working in isolation, they're working in silo, and sometimes there's an assumption that what they are doing is right. Maybe what they are doing is not right, or what they are doing could be improved. So communication is of critical importance. And teaching cannot just be any act of making noise in the classroom. People think when you're just making noise in the classroom, that is teaching. Teaching should be innovative, should be building on an inclusive culture. It is an act that is reflective, and it should be based on scientifically proven methods. So you can't just go in the classroom and just make noise. So here in this study, in terms of the mentoring, we encourage that although the mentees can be guided on how to teach inclusively, but they need to innovate more by themselves. They need to be creative by themselves. They need to look out what are the things that could work in their situation, because teacher A and teacher B and teacher C are differently talented. And even if we can share the expertise, we will never implement those in the same way in the classroom. And lastly, there is power relations in the relationship of the mentor and the mentee, especially in the school situation, that the mentors have got to allow the mentees or the pre-service teachers to to take an initiative. Often when we realized in schools is that the mentor teachers or the experienced teachers, when they're mentoring the younger teachers, they are trying to replicate themselves. They are trying to show what they know to the young teachers. And the young teachers are not themselves. They have got to develop their own teaching identity. This is very critical. Although we are mentoring the pre-service teachers, we should allow them to develop their own mentoring identity. So this is what I wanted to share with you. The project is ongoing. These are just preliminary. Findings, and we are still conducting this in many schools. Maybe next time I will come up with something a bit more tangible. Thank you very much.